So for TNT, this is beanbag relay. Sorry, are we good? Okay. TNT beanbag relay, and then we have Trek and Journey, which is basketball relay. So Trek and Journey team players, they have to maintain their current position. It's really the same thing for beanbag relay, so depending on how many players you have and kind of what it is. So for beanbag relay, so again, the outside team, they cannot cross the circle, and then the inside player has to have a foot inside the triangle for beanbag relay, and then for basketball relay, both feet are inside the triangle, correct? Yes. And so just making sure, if the beanbag or ball go outside your big triangle for any reason, it's disqualification. So just making sure that everybody is aware of that. One of the biggest disqualifications we have outside of the inside player breaking the plane is the ball or the beanbag exits the inside triangle where the inside player misses it. So make sure you're practicing that a lot with your clubbers. Yes?
One question. On the last throw, the center player, do they have to have the beanbag in their hand when they run around?
Yes.
Okay, so they have to stay
They have to be in control of the beanbag or the ball, depending on which one.
And then all the way till you knock that inner pin.
Touch pin.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, for those of you online, the question was, does the inside player have to have the beanbag or the ball in their possession? And the answer is yes. So they get the last throw in, they have to have possession of the bag before they leave the triangle or the ball, and then they run around and they have to have possession of it when they hit the touch pin. So, good question. So we have running relays. We have the sprint relay, marathon relay, the marathon medley. So just kind of how everybody will be lined up. Those white hash marks are just there for kind of purposes to give a little bit of a visual. They don't have to line up there. The only thing is when they are handing off the baton, it has to happen within their quadrant or on a three-way circle, kind of their third of the circle. So the handoff must be complete prior to crossing your team's color line. I do want to go through the passing zone just to show you guys what it is. It's one quadrant or one triangle of the circle. And then I want to go through kind of the rules when it comes to passing, because this is one that I get a lot of questions about as a circle director, or there's a lot of concerns. So the big one that I want you guys to know is they get the current part of the circle, the current either third or quadrant, plus the next one to move out of the way. A lot of times I'll have coaches or clubbers come up to me at the end of a race and get really upset that they felt like they were impeded in their progress because the player didn't move out of the way right away when they tapped him on the shoulder. They have the current triangle plus the next one to move out of the way. So it doesn't have to be immediate, it just has to make sure that it's done kind of before the second pin is what I teach and coach my teams on. The other thing I want to make very clear is that if your clubber taps them with the baton, they are going to be disqualified. So it specifically calls it out in the rules. We don't want the team to think that they're using that as a weapon, even if they're not intending to do it. But I will tell you from personal experience with teams that I've coached, when you have something in your hand, it's a lot easier to go a little bit harder, like get out of my way, especially if it's the second or third time they're tapping, it gets harder and harder. So the baton should be in the left hand anyway, if you're doing it right, because that's where the handoff always happens, and then you should be tapping with your right, because they're supposed to move to the outside. So that's the expectation, is if your clubber gets tapped, they move to the outside. So the other thing is we're not going to tolerate any type of pushing. I've seen clubbers get frustrated, whether it's intentional or inadvertent, and literally like shove someone. Like one time they literally kind of flew outside the whole square because they got pushed so hard. Your team will be disqualified for that as well. So just want to make sure that you guys know that. Failure to move when touched may result in disqualification or unsportsmanlike conduct being called. I talked about this. Unnecessary pushing another runner will result in disqualification and unsportsmanship conduct being called. You lose the points by hand. By hand, not baton. Slower runner moves to the right, and it's used in sprint relay, marathon medley, and sprint and the marathon. So the player being passed doesn't need to slow down, but they do need to move over to the right-hand side. Three-legged race, so it's 2 laps. The tag rule is in effect. For Trek and Journey, if any player falls to the floor, that team is disqualified. And so I just wanted to kind of go through that real quick. So 2 players start together, only 1 band, so you can't have 3 bands that go all the way up to the knee to keep your legs together. It's only 1 band is allowed for that. It's 2 laps. Again, the tag rule is in effect in this race and this race only. So if your team is tagged or passed, they're disqualified. I did the line judges training. I said typically the circle director can see it coming and position themselves in a position where they can either pull the team into the middle or make sure that they're out of the way, but that doesn't always happen. And so just make sure that your team doesn't just like stop where they're at. We need to get them off the circle as quick as possible so that the rest of the team can continue to go. When it comes to the tag rules, again, same thing. It needs to be by hand, not a push. The team can also be passed. They need to move quickly out of kind of the playing area. Failure to move when touched may result in disqualification or unsportsmanlike conduct. So please make sure your team knows, with this one especially, and you only have 2 or 4 clubbers running this, and so make sure that they know if they're tagged that they are going to be out. And so if they get passed, they need to be out. In the very rare situation, it's only happened once to me as a circle director, where a team actually knocked down a pin right before they passed. At that point, it can be really hard because the team is like, oh, I was just passed, and they kind of give up and stop. We'll try to do our best to mitigate that. So encourage your team. Just because you're being passed doesn't necessarily mean you're out, but it's likely, so you need to kind of move out of the way. And if a line judge or circle director says, like, keep going, then they can keep going at that point. And then with Trek and Journey, so this happened a couple of years ago where a team kind of fell. The hand is okay. So if their hand touches the ground, they're okay. It's if the knee touches an elbow, if they fall on the ground. But if they trip and catch themselves and just a hand touches, that's not considered falling down. They can continue with the race. So just want to make sure I clarify that. Tug of war. So obviously we have different tugs for Trek and Journey and with TNT. But as far as TNT goes, the tug, we start with the rope taut. That happened because one time we had a kid dislocate his shoulder because there were these kids, and if you remember or you don't know, we used to start, everybody's right foot was in the middle, and the rope was really, and then we blew the whistle and everybody jerked back really fast and created a little bit of an injury situation. So now we start with the rope is taut. It's kind of everybody's back where they're at. This is where, as a coach, you can kind of come up onto your color line where the circle is. So you can see the green X on this represents where you can be. The line judge is going to be the one who's actually controlling the beanbag, not you as a coach, not a player. But you can kind of yell at your team. It gets a little confusing on a 3-way circle because they're kind of pulling in a different direction, and so really important from a coach perspective that you're kind of teaching them. The line judges and circle director will show them where they need to pull to if it's a 3-way, but making sure that you're available for your team will be important on this. There was a couple other rules. So the players have to have their hands like this. So for those of you on camera, you can hopefully see. You can't have one up and one down. You can't have them both like this. You can't have them separated. All 4 hands are together. So one player is like this, the next player is like this, and all 4 hands are touching. You can wear gloves. I recommend wearing, some sort of gloves if you have them. Whoever's doing the tug, you don't have to if they don't want to. It's not that big of a deal, but sometimes there can be a little bit of a rope burn and it's uncomfortable and that type of stuff. So if you want to wear gloves or have your clubbers wear gloves, that's fine. Shoes are the most important in this event. Making sure their shoes are tight, they're tied, and they have good grip. That's really it. So making sure Crocs, Uggs, things like that, or in that genre of footwear. Not ideal for this game. So footwear is the most important on this. As far as Trek and Journey goes, obviously there's a lot of different strategies on how to pull or just sit and wait, things like that. But it's the same philosophy. The rope will be taut. Everybody will be lined up. We'll get everybody lined up depending on how many teams we have and where we're at with that when it comes to the tug. Then we have the sprint and marathon race. So depending on which club it is and which players, will determine how many laps. So again, passing rule is in effect in this, but no tag rule. As a coach, again, you can kind of be on the top corner or whichever corner color you are, counting laps for your club. Or again, the line judges are going to have their hands behind their back counting laps, not out in front. It's not their job to let your team know how many laps they've gone. So please make sure that you are counting for your team. It's going to be important for that. Then we have balloon volley for TNT. So the balloon has to break the plane of the line. So again, in a 3-way circle, it can be a little more confusing. We'll make sure as judges and directors that we communicate that out to you and you see where it is. We'll have the pins lined up on the outside line, the square. so they know exactly where they'll be at, and then the line judges will be positioned at the corners or at the thirds, depending on where it's at. So, but this one is wherever the balloon passes, it can pass on the ground as long as it's not kicked intentionally, or it can pass in the air, but as long as it passes that color, that'll be the winning team for that event. So we have multiple heats with this, as well as multiple flights, so please make sure you have your team ready to go. And this one goes fast. This is one of those ones where we kind of just keep playing because each circle is going to be at a different pace, and we're going to go through the whole event kind of circle by circle versus we'll start together as one big group, but then after that each event's going to go kind of until we finish the entire event. Then we have Beanbag Bonanza. So this is the one where the one beanbag is in the center and then the one is on the outside, and then we're swapping. So either it'll be your color bag and a different color bag, or your color bag and a striped bag, and we'll position it, and what we're looking for is that color bag for your team is in possession of the player who touches the touch pin at the end. So red team has a red bag in their hand. If they have the striped bag or the other color bag, that means they messed it up somewhere. We skipped a player, it went out of sequence, and then you won't get points for it. A couple big important rules on this one. Obviously, number one, we want to make sure that the players are not leaving the outside circle until they have the bag in their hand, so at the handoff. But the most important disqualification is where they break the plane on the inside triangle, or they're throwing the bags down. So the specific rule says place the bag. You can see it, beanbag must be placed on the floor. And so that means bag down, bag up. So we need to see that transition happen. Obviously their hand won't hit the ground because there's a bag in between it, but if we see them drop up more than probably an inch or so, the line judges are going to call it as a disqualification. And this will be an event we'll do our best as judges and directors to stop the team the minute it happens. Yes?
Also, if you are not dropping it from distance and running, it's going to go out of your circle, out of your quadrant, probably.
Oh, yes. So if you didn't hear online what Dave was saying, if you are dropping it, typically what happens with the momentum of the clubber, the beanbag slides out of the triangle anyway. So just make sure that you are teaching your teams to place the beanbag in and out. And again, we'll stop it as we see it as best we can, and then we'll, hey coach, we'll point to it. You can see usually the bag is clearly over the line, or if we see that the big drops happening, we'll stop it and we'll communicate to you as a coach kind of what the situation is. Then we have the agility race. So this is for Trek and Journey. So this one is a really fun one, and so we have the pins lined up in the middle. And they kind of do, it's not a figure 8 because it doesn't actually cross, but you're in and out of the circle on 4 different times. And so just make sure that for those of you Trek and Journey teams, this is an interesting one to practice, and make sure that the team, your clubbers, understand which pins they have to go around and which pins they have to go inside. Typically the most common disqualification in this is the circle pin gets knocked down because that's the one they're hugging as they come in really tight. Just please make sure that you're working with your teams and they understand kind of the expectation, because this one goes really fast and there's a lot of opportunity for people to collide with each other if they're not going around the pins the correct way and direction when it comes to that. So this is a better diagram of kind of where it is in the direction of travel. So again, the clubber will start on the behind their line, and typically it's a little bit further up from the pin as they kind of run in kind of straight down. And then our last event's balloon relay. So balloon has to go through 4 different pairs of legs each time. You have to straddle zones 1, 2, and 3. Trek and Journey are evenly spaced out, but the zones are slightly different than this diagram. Sorry, we got one more.